Okay, let's start by disassembling this controller. To do that, we're going to need a few tools. Start with a Phillips PH00 size screwdriver. This is a small one that you can purchase with a kit from our website. And you also want some tweezers or a small pair of pliers. And then a few different spudger / pry tools will also be very helpful. Okay, the first thing we need to do is flip this over and remove any paddles if we have those installed. And we need to make sure that our triggers are set on the highest setting, so we have the full range of motion. Next, we need to remove this front panel. To do that, we just slide this release, and that will pop right off. And then we need to remove our trigger modules. So we need to lift the levers, and those just slide right out. We want to put those levers back down, and the next step is to remove this lower trim piece. So to do that, we need to use one of our pry tools and just basically work our way all the way around. Sometimes can take a little bit of effort. Once that's all released, it just slides right off. And now we need to remove our bumpers, R1 and L1. So again, we use a small pry tool. Just pull back on the trigger, get the tool behind the bumper, and pop those off. Next, we need to remove this small slide and spring. You want to be careful with this so we don't lose that spring. It likes to shoot off out of there. So to remove this piece, we need to slide it to the left, and then that will lift up. And we'll take the spring and that piece and set those off to the side. And now we can remove the screws on the back shell. So we have 6 on the main part of the shell, and then 2 more behind R1 and L1. Okay, with those removed, we can see that the 2 black screws are longer than the silver ones. Just remember that those went in these 2 inside corners here. All right, next we need to separate the front and back half of the shell. So again, we can use a pry tool to go around both sides of the shell. All right, with that separated, we can just kind of lift and slide forward on the back of the shell. If these two black pieces here happen to fall out, just need to make sure that those are in place before we put the controller back together. They just kind of cover up parts of these holes here where the slide is, but those should slide up and underneath the top piece here. I'll take one out just so you can see. So that slides up and underneath that piece and kind of sits in place there. Like that. All right, next step is to remove our battery. That's just clipped in place. We should be able to just easily pop that out. Okay, for the next step, we need to disconnect two rumble motors. Those are just plugged in. Just get them out of the way so we can easily remove our triggers. And now we can remove the two screws from each trigger to remove those. So one is in here right behind the trigger and the other one is on the side. Okay, we'll move those off to the side. And now we can lift our trigger module out and we'll disconnect the ribbon cable, just pulling straight up. Okay, now we will get into our trigger mod installation. So we'll take our main controller and just set that out of the way for now. Okay, we'll start with the right side trigger module. We'll take out the ribbon cable temporarily, and we need to start by removing these two screws on the inside that attach the slider for the OEM trigger positioning. This part we will not be reinstalling because with the smart triggers we don't need to have that anymore. All right, we will set that piece off to the side, and as I said, we will not be reinstalling that. And now we need to go to the other side and remove these two screws. Okay, now we will take and pull this side housing off. And we need to remove this pin. So a couple ways you can do that. If you have a nice pair of pliers, you can just grab it and pull it out. Additionally, I may just put that back in for a second. Oh, our spring came out from the other side, but we'll reinstall that later. Just want to show you guys another option for removing that pin. Is if you have a pair of tweezers, you can kind of take it further down, not by the end. You'll have more pinch power here, and you can slide that out. All right, now we have this little arm, which we will again not reinstall this little piece, and the trigger just lifts up and off. All right, now what we want to do is remove the little rubber pad from the front here. Just grab that with some tweezers and pull it out. Again, that will not get reinstalled either. We can move on to removing this flex. And this is probably the hardest part because the flex is held on by double-sided tape behind this small little switch, and also behind this sensor here for R2. So we have to remove that. Try and do it without destroying anything. A small flat tool is something that will really help to do that. This is something from a nail file kit. I'm not sure what you call it, but it's a nice small flat piece of metal, so we can start off by just kind of digging behind the flex. I'm coming from underneath through this gap and going behind it and just working my way through the adhesive. All right, until we get that. So now you can see where that adhesive is behind that part of the flex. Come over here and just try and get underneath this little switch and remove it from there as well. And we'll take our tweezers and pull out the connector. All right, now we have that out. You can see where that adhesive was behind that original flex as well. And now what I also do is remove all of that residue. If it's flat and you get it out nice and flat, then it might be okay to leave it there, and that'll help hold in the new mod. But we don't want any kind of bulk behind the flex because it's got only enough room for everything to work. So we're just going to use this tool and get rid of all that old adhesive. All right, with that adhesive gone, we can start to put our mod back together. So we will grab the right trigger module. They are labeled RT and LT. And we need to take this and make a 90-degree bend on that white line there. That's just going to help everything to lay flat. And we can either install this first and try and plug it in, but I actually find it's easier to plug it in first, and then we'll work that L1 into place, or R1 in this case. Okay, then we kind of just bend that around. And we'll use our tweezers to set it in place in there. All right, now what we can do is, just to make sure everything presses like it should, we will grab our R1, can snap that in. So if everything works good, then we can just pop the R1 back off. And we can continue with the next part of the installation. Okay, for our next step, we need to take our trigger and we need to trim off this small little L-shaped piece from down here. We don't want to do anything with the larger piece. That's actually what pushes our button, so we need to make sure that stays intact with this small little L-shaped piece. It doesn't need to be completely removed, but we need to get rid of at least about 1 millimeter of it. So you can either cut that off with a knife or just a small pair of side cutters just to trim that down. All right, now we can take our trigger. It will hook over top of this piece here, and then we'll put that small metal rod back in. Sometimes you have to wiggle that around a little bit to make sure it gets all the way through to the other side. That's looking good. So we can test that by putting the cover back on. That cover should fit flush to here to the rest of the case. And right now we're going to put one screw back in this side. Actually, we can put both those screws in. And we will now reinstall the little spring. So there is a small kind of key-shaped piece there that the spring, center of the spring goes over. And we want the bottom to sit down behind the little latch there. We can hold that. And we could take our tweezers and kind of flip this back behind the trigger. Like that. So now our trigger is back to having its spring again. And the next step, we can install our mount. So with the kit, you have these mounts and they are labeled right and left. So we have a right and left. We need the right one, and that goes right here. So we'll put this screw back in along with our right side mount. We just want it to be all the way down in there, so we'll just kind of hold it down as we're screwing in so it stays all the way down in the right place. All right, like that. So we already have some reduced movement, but as soon as we put the button in, that will give our final position. And our final screw, which should go right there, we actually don't need to put back in, but if that was just there holding that slide module, you can put it back in if you want to, just to keep that screw around somewhere. It's not going to go all the way in, but if you just want to keep that screw around so you don't lose it. All right, and now our last step is to slide the button into the holder. It will be a little snug, so sometimes you need to just push down on that button to get it past the bump as we're sliding it in. So we'll go down. We need to make sure it goes past the little piece that holds it in place. Like that. Kind of snaps in. And that's our final movement there. All right, so our module is back together and it's ready to install on the controller. So we'll just put the original ribbon back in and we'll go over to the left side and do the same thing. So we'll remove that flex, we'll remove our screws. All right, again, this piece does not get reinstalled. And we'll remove the side cover. We'll again pull that out, and this small piece we do not reinstall. Remove our trigger. We'll just take our trigger here and just show you another method. As I said, we could take and trim this off with a knife. So now our trigger is ready. Grab this rubber pad, again does not get reinstalled, move that out of the way. And we'll just remove this spring so it doesn't go flying anywhere. And we can work on removing the flex here. So again, I'm just going to get underneath it with my tool, work it around to pop it off. Same thing, coming up through the bottom. All right, and we have that removed. So most of the adhesive on that part came with it, but as you can see now, this adhesive behind the triggers is quite messed up. So we just want to completely remove that again. And this little gear came out, but we can just, it has to line up a specific way to fit through this sensor. So you just spin it till it drops into place. And we can grab our left side mod, and again, we bend it in half on the white line. And we will take it and plug that in. And work our L1 button into place. So we will give it a test. Got a good click. Now, if you're not getting a good click, it could be because you have some of that adhesive behind there. It's not sitting far back flush enough, but also sometimes these bumper modules are just manufactured a little bit different. Not everyone's exactly the same. So what pushes the button is this round hole here. So if it seems tight, sometimes you have to shave that down just a hair. But I would check everything else first, that we're sitting flat, nothing's behind it, and that we don't have some other issue. All right, so we have that in place, tested, ready to go. And now we can reinstall our trigger. Put the cover on, make sure it's flush against there, and we'll put these two screws back in. All right, now we will take our left side mount. We're doing the same thing. Get it into place here. And we just want to make sure it's rotated all the way down. So we'll just hold that as we are screwing it in. Okay, now for our spring on the left side, we have to do a little bit different than the right side, because this side is missing a little bump that is meant to hold that spring in place. So normally it's held in place by the adaptive trigger slide there, and we don't have that anymore. So what we are going to do is take the small little plastic washer from the kit, and we will put that back on the screw and screw that into the trigger. So as you put this in, there's a small little plastic bump there that is used for the other piece to get it aligned. It could help to remove that, but you don't have to. If you just take and as you're screwing it down, push that washer up. So we're just pushing it up against that little plastic nub and tighten it down. Now that gives the spring a stop so it doesn't just go flying off. All right, as you can see, the spring is there behind that washer, so it doesn't fly off. All right, and now we can, like the other side, put the button into the holder. So again, it's usually a tight fit, so you need to just push down on the button a little bit as we're working it into the holder. And we want to push it all the way in and make sure it snaps down behind that bump in the back. And that's it. Now both sides of the trigger are complete, and we can put our controller back together. Okay, now that we have the triggers all back together and tested, to make the final installation back to the controller, we need to be able to have access to the screw that is behind here. So we will remove these two screws and just pull those mounts out of the way with a button in it temporarily so we can completely screw these back into the controller. So we'll just move these out of the way. We'll put our trigger module back in, plug in the ribbon cable. And we need to hit that screw down behind the mount. So we've got that one in. Can put a screw back in our mount. Again, double check that that works, and put our screw in the last mount, and we'll go to the other side. Okay, with all of our screws back in, buttons back mounted again, we'll double check everything is working. We can plug back in our two rumble motors. And we can plug back in our battery. And the next step will be to put the back half of the shell on again. So this needs to kind of come from an angle. From the top there. And we will grab all those screws. Again, remembering the two longer black screws go in the corner here. Okay, our next step is to get this little black slide plastic piece in. So we start it off on the left and slide it over to the right. Make sure we don't lose that little spring. So I'm just going to hold my finger over one half of it while I put it on the other mount so it doesn't have the opportunity to go flying anywhere. All right, that's in place. Now we can put this trim piece back on. This kind of slides down on here. Really need to be careful with these two little clips that they make it in there right underneath the microphone port there. And just clipping all those back in place. Flip our levers up. Thumbstick modules in, and now we just need to put in our L1 and R1. So we're just double checking everything is clicking. We are good. And final piece, it's the top trim over the thumbsticks. And that's it, we're done. You can find these mods on our website, consolecustoms.com, also on eBay, and soon to be on Amazon. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're here in the United States and generally respond in less than a day. Thank you.